Okay, emails are always vulnerable. Anytime that you're sending an email from your computer, it can be read anywhere along any of these points until it gets to its final destination. So it's like you're sending a postcard across and anyone can just pick up the postcard and read it. So in order to be secure, you essentially have to be able to put you have to be able to put your email into a packet like an envelope in order to make sure that other people can't read it. So if you're using a program like PGP, which stands for Pretty Good Privacy, that's a way that you can password protect your emails. And essentially what you're doing then is you're putting your email into an envelope that keeps it secure and means that other people can't read it across the internet. So when it's in an envelope and you're sending it across the internet, it can only be opened and read by the recipient who has the password and the software in order to open it up and read it. Also, if you are using a web browser, you can, or if you're using web-based email like Gmail and other programs like that, you can assure that it's not being able to be read by anyone along the way if you're using HTTPS. So HTTPS gmail.com. So as long as that is in your URL, you're ensured that it's encrypted. The other thing to remember is that the other person reading it via the webmail also has to be using HTTPS. So that's how you are assured that no one can read it from one web browser to the other. So if you're using any web-based email, I wouldn't actually rate those email services because I think the piece is you have to make sure that if you're using something like Gmail or Yahoo or anything like that, as long as when you go to the URL, they have HTTPS in the URL, then you know it's safe and secure. And so it's really not about rating it. And also the services change all the time as to what they're doing around privacy. The other thing to always remember is it's not also just about what webmail you're using, but also the recipient. So if the recipient of your email is using webmail and they're not using HTTPS, then it's not secure. So if you are looking for a secure email provider, generally, as I mentioned before, using HTTPS, making sure that the email provider provides that is very good practice to do. The thing you always have to remember when you're using a third-party email service is that your email is going to another server. It's going to a computer on the internet, right? And it's being stored there. So if you are using a company like Google or Yahoo, these companies still negotiate with various governments and can come up with deals where they release information because they're being pressured by governments. So if you are looking for a more secure email provider, using RiseUp is a very good choice because RiseUp was put together by activists, and they are they are taking extra steps to make sure that their servers stay secure. Now, one thing that's happened recently is that one of their servers got subpoenaed by the US government. Fortunately, there wasn't any information on there, but the fact of the matter was that their offices were raided and the computer was physically taken away. So you always have to keep in mind when you're putting information on the internet and it's going out to a server, you don't know what then is going to happen to that server. But at least with a thing like RiseUp, they're a bit more secure because they are activists and they're saying that they will protect your information as best they can. Any email attachment or a URL that you're getting via email, you have to treat as suspicious. Never, ever open an email attachment or click on a link if you don't know who has sent you the email. And then even in some cases, you still have to be careful in case that email account has been hacked or something like that. So email attachments always should be treated with suspicion. You're a little bit more safe if you have good antiviral software running. And then the other thing with the URL, always only click on links where the web address looks familiar to you. And also, often when you hover your mouse over a link, it will often show you what the actual address is. And as long as those two addresses look the same and safe to you, then it's okay to click on it. So as we showed before, any communication across the internet it can be read by anyone along the way. So if an activist has been detained by the authorities, it's quite easy for the authorities to have seen all correspondence that they've had going across the internet if they haven't encrypted their email. So it is quite easy for the countries to be able to, or authorities to be able to show activists the correspondence that they have if they've been surveilling them. As long as you're using encryption on your email, as long as you've got good passwords on webmail and things like that, governments cannot access that information. And there isn't special software for them to get around it yet. It's quite easy to encrypt your email content, both attachments and just the content itself, and make sure that no one else can read it. As long as you need to have the software in order to send it. Now, if you're using webmail and it's HTTPS, then it's absolutely encrypted. Your attachment that you're putting onto the email is there. If you're using a client like Outlook or Firefox, you need to also have some software running that's called PGP, or Pretty Good Privacy. Now, if you want instructions on how to install this and get this software, you can go to security.ngoinabox.org. There's all sorts of tools here for doing encryption, including encrypting your email, and there's content in multiple languages, including Farsi. Passwords are very important. So many different things now require passwords and ask for passwords. So it's important that you have a very good password. You need a password that no one else is going to be able to guess, but you also need a password that you can remember. So that's the critical thing about passwords. Okay, so a bad password is a password like that's a common word or a name. If you're using something like mom or Fred or something like that, that's not a good password. It's easy to guess. Also, if you're using numbers like birth date or an anniversary date, anything that is personal and is connected to you is quite easy to guess, and that's a very bad password. When you're choosing a good password, a good password would be comprised of several things. One would be symbols. Two would be use of caps. And then the third thing would be using numbers within it. So for shorter passwords, say Zaresk, you could do your password like this: Z3R35HK. That makes it a little bit harder to guess. It's a little bit easier for you to remember. You can also use something like a phrase. So you could do something like to be or not to, oops. And use both numbers, small caps, large caps within the phrase. So that would be a good password. It's not okay to have the same password for everything. If somebody does guess your password or get a hold of your password, that means that they would have access to everything. So one very important tactic in assuring that all your online information is secure, having different passwords for different things is just critical. It is important to change your password frequently, because if anyone ever guesses your password, they then have access to everything. So the more often you change your password, the more less likely it is that someone can get a hold of the password and get a hold of that online information. What's probably more important, though, as far as thinking about when you would change your password, if you think at any point any of your information has gotten compromised, then you would want to change your password immediately. So if there is an indication that someone has gotten a hold of your password, access to your account, immediately afterwards you would want to change your password. Likewise, if any of your devices or equipment got out of your control, so say someone got a hold of your mobile phone, or someone did get a hold of your computer and it was out of your sight, immediately after that you would want to change all your passwords again to ensure that no one had gotten the passwords off of those devices. So if you're using complicated passwords and long passwords and ones that it's hard for you to remember, a password manager is very important. So then you could use something like KeePass, which stores all your passwords securely on your computer, and then you can access those passwords whenever you need them, depending on what site you're going to. Again, that's something that's on security.ngoinabox.org, and it is called, let's write it up here, sorry, KeePass.